everyone. My name is Stephen Huang. I'm here from Culture Amp. I'm here today to talk about measuring inclusion and what that means and how Culture Amp approaches that. And I also have a solution for you all as well. I'm from San Francisco, so this is my little video of San Francisco. Yes, thank you. It's the best slide in the presentation, so enjoy it. Next. There you go. That's my picture. I'm wearing the same shirt. Thank you. I've been with Culture Amp for a little over a year now, but prior to that, I was the first HR analyst at Square, where I worked on diversity metrics. And before that, I was the first HR analyst at Facebook, and I worked on diversity metrics there as well, among other things. And before that, I was a life insurance actuary at Towers Watson, so working on mortality statistics and people dying, and so I really thank Facebook for giving me the opportunity to work on something so important as diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So I have a unique perspective coming from Square and Facebook, building up our diversity metrics from the ground up. And at Culture Amp, I get to work with tech companies as well. My role is an insights strategist, so I help companies surface insights about their workforce, and I help them strategize about how they can align these surveys to their overall business strategy. Should I be pointing somewhere else? There we go. These are just some of the companies I work with. So you can see that I have a unique perspective on tech. Culture Amp, we have over 650 customers. About half are in tech. These are some of the kind of more high-profile tech companies I work with. And at Culture Amp, we do employee surveys. So we survey everyone in the company, we get their demographic information, and we can sort the different employee experiences by different groups. Unfortunately, a lot of these tech companies only collect things like gender, and it's binary, or they'll collect information about race and ethnicity from the EEO options, which you should never really rely on the government for setting standards among inclusivity. Sorry for the government workers. And so I want to kind of discuss the problem that I've seen with diversity and inclusion working with all these tech companies, but I also have a solution at the end that I want to address. Next slide. I think I'm hypothesizing here, but one of the problems that I see in tech is that we focus a lot on representation. And I don't want to discredit any of the work that Tracy Chow and others have done on forcing tech companies and making it the standard to report on representation. But with all those tech companies I work with, a lot of them still suck at diversity and inclusion. They have this outside image of doing it well, but they really don't, and I can see it in the data. And my theory on why that is because a metrics person, you never want to over-index on one metric. Representation, how many people do you have? So a lot of people try to do a lot of diversity hiring to try to make our numbers look better, right? How can we get more women? How can we get more people of color? And it's about how many, and that's the metric that we track. One of my roles at Facebook and Square, and a lot of companies do this, is I build models to make our numbers look better. It's bad. Everyone point at me and say, bad. Bad. And it's not me, it's just, I mean, it is me, but it's also what society has done, right? We want, how can we make ourselves look better? Social desirability bias. How can we make our numbers look better? There's an inconsistent measurement in defining tech. So I built a model that says, hey, if we include engineering support, that makes our numbers look better. Include. If we include designers and product managers, it makes our numbers look better in these departments, but not these. Make them tech, right? So when you focus on just one metric and just one measurement, it's an issue. So Fast Company wrote this article about diversity hiring. It's only one piece of the puzzle. And they mentioned the inclusion survey that I've developed in tandem with Paradigm and other partners, including Melinda and Wayne. So why measure inclusion? When you work on all this diversity hiring to bring in these diverse groups, you need to make sure that your environment and processes are inclusive so that they actually want to stay, right? That's the employee experience that we should be measuring. It's important that we hire diverse people, but we need to create inclusive environments that keep them there. I really don't know where to point with this. There we go. So I've introduced a new standard for the inclusion survey. It's free for tech companies to use on Culture Amp's platform. It was also developed open source in partnership with Paradigm. So these questions that we've developed that are based on a lot of research that I'm about to show you are free to use on any platform, but we want them, it's ideal to use it on the Culture Amp platform because it's built with our analytics in mind. It's been endorsed by Project Include, so I've sat down with Ellen Powell. She's using this for all of her customers that she works with at Project Include. It is 100% anonymous. It allows for benchmarking, which I think is really important. How are you doing relative to other tech companies? How are you doing to tech companies in your space, in your size? Benchmarking is important, and a lot of business leaders like that. It allows for intersectionality reporting. Someone mentioned that earlier. So yes, you may have X number of women and they might be having a fine experience, but what about the women in this minority group, or the women in this location, or the women of this age and this tenure? And you need to have that intersectionality reporting that's built into the tool. And there's also some deeper analytics that I've built into the platform. So the survey that I'm going to talk about, as I mentioned, is free for tech companies to use it, and I will tell you at the end how to get access to that. There are 3 parts of the survey. I'm not going to go over the survey in depth. I don't have time. But I did want to go over the 3 sections and why they're important. The first is these 5 questions you're seeing here. A lot of people would be like, wait, these aren't inclusion questions. These are just normal engagement survey questions. Yes, you're right. That first one is, I'm proud to work at my company. The second one is, I would recommend my company as a great place to work. These are what people say about a company. The middle one is, my company motivates me to go beyond what I would in a similar role elsewhere. This is about discretionary effort, motivation, emotional commitment. And the last 2 are about intent to stay. So I rarely think about looking for a job at another company, and I see myself still working at my company in 2 years' time. This is about present and future commitment. These questions are important because they tie to business outcomes like productivity, sales performance, retention. If you want leaders to care, this is the best way to do it. Show them that this stuff actually ties to business outcomes. Oops, go back one. Now the clicker's working. Next slide. Thank you. I'm not going to go over the individual inclusion questions, but when I sat down with Paradigm, with Wayne, Melinda, and other people in our diversity symposium, we had to decide on what constructs we want to ask about. So here you see fairness, opportunities and resources, decision-making, voice, belonging, diversity, contribution to a broader purpose, and comments. There are questions about growth mindset. There's questions about belonging, uncertainty. There's questions about fairness and job performance, compensation. Some of these topics are, I would say about half are based on research that's come out in the last decade, so belonging, uncertainty, growth mindset. Some of the other questions are in our normal engagement surveys, and surveying over 1 million people, we know there are statistical differences between men and women, so those questions made it up in there. We've tested these questions with Amazon MTurk data, with about a handful of companies that have been part of our beta participants, and they've all been finding really, really interesting results from these questions. And these questions are open source. I'll share them with you at the end. Slide. And the third part of the survey captures demographic information. And this is where we needed a lot of help. We really struggled. We went back and forth. As I mentioned, we decided not to rely on the government to set standards for race and ethnicity. We kind of blew that section up. There are more than just men and women. There's 5 gender identities that we decided to have in our survey. There are 7 sexual orientations. And there's always another option if you want to add that. Thank you. The next thing we have up there is a few more demographics that I wanted to show. We look at things like family status. Are you a caregiver? Are you a veteran? Are you differently abled in any of the following ways? Are you a native English speaker? And next slide. So that was just kind of showing some of the demographics that we have. There's actually, I think, 18 different demographic questions that you get to choose from. This is just a slice of what the reporting looks like. So in each of these questions, yes, you get to see your score. You also get to see your score by each of those demographics and see the spread in each one. And you also have intersectionality reporting. But what I wanted to cover today is the importance of driver analysis. And these are some of the questions. Driver analysis is something that's built into the Culture Amp platform. So I encourage you to use the open source questions in any sort of surveying platform you're using. But when you use it on Culture Amp, there's a correlation analysis that's implemented for each question relative to the engagement index. So on the very left-hand side under impact, you see there are these kind of two concentric circles to different degrees of overlap. The amount of overlap in those circles shows the amount of correlation between this question and those engagement questions I first discussed: pride, recommendation, motivation, and intent to stay. What this says is that this question, and this is actual real company's data, belonging. I feel like I belong at my company, and this belonging uncertainty question about when bad things happen, do you still feel like you belong, or do you question whether you belong? These two questions at this company have a very high correlation to engagement. So what this says is there's a pattern. If people answer these questions positively, there's a very high chance they answer those engagement questions positively. There's a very high chance these things relate to retention and productivity and performance. At the individual company level, this driver analysis allows you to ask 28 questions, and it allows you to focus specifically on the things that you know are going to tie the most to engagement. So it gives you focus. From my perspective, and when we run this with hundreds of companies, this driver analysis kind of will help me prove what we already know, that the most inclusive environments produce the best workforces. Vince Lombardi, my favorite white guy. Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. This survey has been in development for something about 6, 7, 8, 9 months. And it's so far from perfect. It's so far. But what I've realized is that as we shop this around with different people and different leaders and industries in the space, it's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It never will be perfect. But I don't want that to prevent us, leaders in this space, from saying we need pragmatic solutions. So this survey is available if you email inclusion@cultureamp.com. Next slide. Oh, we're going backwards. Anyway, if you email inclusion@cultureamp.com, we provide this survey for free. So if you want to use this in your company, at other organizations, if you're a consulting firm and you still want to use these questions, if you're a CEO, thank you for being here. Please use these questions. Just email inclusion@cultureamp.com. Also, if you follow the hashtag inclusion survey, you'll see there's a lot of discussion already about companies that have been running the survey. Once you take the survey, you're put into a Slack channel with other people that have taken the survey to continue the discussion. Wayne, am I doing questions now, or should I wait kind of till the end? Thank you.